Gentle ladies and gentlemen, rogues and roguettes, feast your ears on episode 27 of Sketchwatch Play. I am John Fleury.
I'm Christopher Wade.
And I threw you off with that, but it'll make more sense in a little bit.
Oh, God.
We are a twice-a-month geek pop culture podcast talking TV, film, cartoons, and video games. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, and most general podcast directories. Please consider subscribing to us on your platform of choice to stay up to date. Follow us on social media, either at SketchWatchPlay on Twitter or Facebook.com/SketchWatchPlay. And we encourage you to leave feedback on those, leave good reviews on iTunes, or email us directly at sketchwatchplay@gmail.com to tell us what you like, what you don't like, and even suggest possible topics for us to talk in the future. How are you, Chris?
I am doing all right today, dude.
Yep.
Just coming down off of Infinity War. And
we're getting to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I just have lots of feels. That's
well, how when did you see it?
I saw it about 2 weeks ago, I think.
Oh, so when it opened?
Yeah. Well, actually, no, not when it opened. I saw it last Saturday or last Sunday. So I guess a week ago. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Because you were. I think you were busy. You've been very busy the past couple of weeks, which is why we've held this off a little bit. And that is not a complaint against you, because I've been guilty of the same thing multiple times. But it was a good opportunity for me to get Tyler back on and have an opening weekend spoiler cast about it. Have you listened to that episode yet?
I actually have not, but I know that you guys have done it, and I wanted to take time out and do it.
So, well, don't feel bad if you repeat some stuff that we brought up. If you bring up other topics, I'll discuss it further with you, though.
Sure.
So I guess your work has been mostly occupying your time the past couple of weeks.
Yes, lots of overtime, and I had a coworker leave,
so more stuff on your desk now, I guess.
Yes, so the work has been piling up. I can handle it. Of course, but
it just takes time.
Man, it takes a lot more time. Yeah.
I've had a couple of random things going on. First thing I'll say is, because I've brought up multiple times, my grandma Mimi and watching all these movies with her and recording. I didn't record this, but I was surprised to learn, because I've showed her a bunch of cartoons, because me, she basically missed the Disney Renaissance in terms of watching these things, because I was like, it talks about like the big three that people always remember, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, and Aladdin. And she was like, I haven't seen any of those. And I was like, how? We were like, I was like in grade school when those came out. You would babysit us all the time. We would watch these all the time. How have you not seen these? And she's like, I never sat down and watched them. I was looking after everything else. So we've watched all three of those now. And I think Beauty and the Beast, she says, is still her favorite of those three, because she loves old school like musicals.
Sure.
But she did love all three. Lion King, she definitely enjoyed. Couple of funny things. I rattled off some of the cast lists, and the only names she recognized were James Earl Jones and Whoopi Goldberg.
Aww.
Yeah, James Earl Jones, I know I rattled off. She loves Field of Dreams, which she's great in. Whoopi Goldberg, I'm not sure. I mean, Color Purple could be up her alley. She loves dramas and period pieces too. But character-wise, two funny things. Like 10 minutes in, when Mufasa's talking to Simba, she just matter-of-factly went, I like his face.
Aw, that's very sweet.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, because she does have trouble keeping track of characters' names and such, like when we watched Avengers, she kept mixing up Thor and Loki's names, but all these African names she was handling fine, but she couldn't remember Scar's name.
Oh, man.
Like, halfway in, around like the time of Be Prepared River, she was like, oh, there's the bad thing. I'm like, Scar. Like, that's the one English name.
The bad thing.
The bad thing. And she did not disappoint to going, with a moment, because I was really waiting for when, towards the end of Scar, just decks Sarabi in the face. I am 10 times the king. That was a big, God. She hated him. But you should. Yeah. That's the point.
The Scar is a hateable son of.
We got to talk Lion King someday. It's such a good movie.
We should.
And I just got to bring it up again, because I remember when it was the episode before our tearjerker one, where I mentioned to Felipe that we were doing it, and he talked about crying at Lion King 2, and I didn't cry at Lion King 1, and you went, you're a monster! But at the same time, here you are saying, I love Coco, but I didn't cry at, who is the monster now, Mr. Wade?
I am the monster.
Yeah, Coco's another one I want to talk someday too, actually.
Sure.
And two other quick things. One, I'm working on my next game video, which is going to be a really fun one. I'm sure it's part of a trend, but because we're running out of time until E3, and where this won't be as easy to do, I'm doing a Smash Brothers character prediction video.
Nice.
But instead of it just being all the ones that I want, it's going to be, I'm doing two top fives in one is my personal most wanted, and another which I think is the most likely like regardless of how I feel. And I know we talked about it a little bit. Rex and Pyra are definitely in the latter list. I mean, I would like to have them, but they're just not in my top 5. I also you'll be. I tweeted about it. In my personal list is Rayman. In my expected list are the rabbits.
Yes.
I'd be happy with both, but not just the rabbits.
See, I would personally enjoy Banjo-Kazooie jumping in.
Oh, yeah. We know that the Xbox guys are open to talking about it. It's kind of up to Nintendo. But yeah. And lastly, two shout-outs because we won't get into it here because it's kind of a personal. I had a shitty week recently, just a lot of turmoil and some stress. And like I've done before, I've talked to you about some of it, and you had some good tips and encouragement. So thank you to that. But one of the things I told you about was like I've done so much work lately on because when I'm not working or gaming, I'm working on the personal projects, the videos, cartoons, and all that. And I actually did just possibly land a freelance gig, my first proper one for animation. An indie studio is going to help me do character rigs and animations for a pitch in Toon Boom. They're going to be sending me more details, like an NDA soon, so I won't really be able to say much about it if it goes through. But I was not feeling as thrilled about it as I just thought I should be. But then the other day, you saw this tweet. I'm still tinkering away on Spacious because that means the world to me. And I redesigned Leslie, one of the female leads, and I tweeted that, and I looked at that, and I was like, oh, I actually feel that satisfaction again. Because her design was like, it was. I'm sure you can identify with this. Sometimes it just takes so many attempts to nail a redesign. Like I'm sure you've gone through that with the Scarecrows or some others. So that was a nice thing. And just one small other shout out to Kaylee Mills, who voiced her and the little sister in the short. And a little congratulations because she's an up and coming voice actress, and she recently confirmed she got the lead role in the dub for that show ReZero, which I understand is pretty popular.
Cool.
Yeah, so that is about it for our introductions. And before we just go any further, do you have a time you need to log off?
I do need to log off around 6.
Oh, we'll be fine. So let's get into we have, in our typical tradition, we each pick one thing. For those who haven't listened to this before, we each start out each episode typically with each of us picking one smaller piece of recent media to discuss, and then we take turns each episode where one of us picks a big thing to discuss. So for veteran listeners, you're probably aware that our last episode was kind of a bonus where Chris was busy and I wanted to have something to fill the gap for this episode. Me and previous guest Tyler Moliterno did a full spoiler cast about Avengers Infinity War. But now, Chris, you're up to date as well. So you saw it a week later, and I've been ruminating on some of it, as I think most people are. So tell me, what did you think?
I don't feel so good.
I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was I called a few deaths pretty early on, but I did like the pacing. I liked how the characters interacted with each other and the smaller little beats that they had. I dug Thanos' portrayal. I wanted to see more of his infamous fascination with death. Because
I don't think that's a thing in this.
I kind of hope they expand on that a little bit more in the next one. At this point, I doubt that they will because they really haven't been talking about it.
He had a very different motivation here, and the only reason he was killing was because he saw it as necessary for preservation.
Yeah, which I thought was a little bit of bullshit, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of like it's kind of like what they did with Killmonger. Noble motivation, horrible answer.
Oh yeah. I also there were times when he was like talking about like cleansing the universe and practicing as a mercy and when he was talking to Doctor Strange and he was like, back on my planet it was bad, and then I said a lottery would be good, non-discriminatory, just a big it's a big lottery where it happens by random, and I'm just sitting there in my seat and I'm like, random, huh? Were you included in that lottery with Thanos?
No, he did not include himself.
Yeah, I thought that was... I'm assuming that he wasn't, but it doesn't sound like he was. This doesn't sound like a pretty trustworthy guy. I mean, sure, he comes across as, very
well. There's only one person he really cared about.
Yeah.
And he did a really shitty job of showing it.
Yeah, that hurt me. A couple of deaths really hurted me. Like, I knew Loki was going to be one of the first. I
had called the entire opening scene with Loki and Heimdall being dead, and I just didn't know. The main factor I didn't expect was Hulk. Like, what a great way to establish Thanos. Yeah, to be the first one to just decimate the Hulk.
And you know what? I mean, that kind of that kind of storytelling device is really strong, and a lot of writers are picking up on, like, when you have a strong character that's part of the essential cast, take care of him first. Really set the tone and showing that the audience that shit's about to go down.
Take care of him so bad he doesn't want to come out for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I've been seeing that happen a lot in modern day storytelling, and it's giving me some pretty good feels. I like that
because you know there's going to be some payoff for it in the next movie.
It's gonna be great.
What were the other deaths? So what were the deaths that hurt you?
The deaths that hurt me was Gamora and Vision.
Oh, those were both. Yeah, those and Loki were the really torturous, impactful ones.
Yeah,
and spoilers, not the big ones not caused by the purge.
Yeah. Those two happen. They're not an afterthought, but they're a means to an end. The big purge. That's how'd you feel about Peter Parker? Oh, that hurt, but I got it.
That's the one that's upsetting the internet the most, it seems.
Well, it's upsetting the internet, but the internet upset me with it because they spoiled me before I went and saw it.
Did you know how it ended before you went?
Oh, I did know how it ended because the internet was like, check out all these pixelation memes. And, you can mute that kind of stuff on Twitter, but only when people tag it.
Yeah.
So when people didn't tag it and I started seeing it, I was like, fuck,
that is why
guys.
I went and saw it opening day at noon and stayed off Twitter and everything. I'm going to do that again for Avengers 4. I'm like, I'm not taking any chances.
Yeah, that's I kind of think that was a bold marketing move on Marvel's part. On one hand, they were like, Thanos demands your silence, but on the other hand, it's like it's one of those reverse psychology gimmicks, or it's like, don't do this thing, wink, wink, because it kind of pushes people to hurry up and see it. Just in case, just so they won't get spoiled by it.
Right.
And it forces them to be a part of the conversation, which is smart thinking. But for those of us who have jobs and are stuck in overtime, they can't get away to the theater and are waiting for the next paycheck, real life kind of happens. And the weird thing is, normally you kind of wait about a week until you really publicly state what's been going on in a major release. I was spoiled 3 days after the release. So I knew they were going to die, or at least I knew Spidey was going to die.
Okay. I will say I'd always called Vision's death because I'm like, there's no way he can exist without that.
Yeah. Vision dies in the comics like horribly, like a bunch of times.
Well, it's still a horrible death in this. Yeah, he dies twice. Horribly.
Yeah. That didn't sit well with me. Vision. A couple of my friends don't care about Vision. I do. I know he's not. I know he's not as cool as Iron Man. He's not as morale driven.
Conceptually, he's just so unique.
Yeah,
he's one of the best parts of Age of Ultron, where he's just observing kind of and learning. And
I liked him. He's a part of the group.
Not quite human or robot. It's just its own weird thing.
He was a part of the family, and he blew up and he got his brain snatched out of his body. I was like, oh god, that's horrible. Everybody else, I felt bad, but I gotta tell you, and I'm gonna sound super smug, but I've been raised on apocalyptic anime since the 90s. I wasn't destroyed by this movie. I still have feels about it, but I was still like, you know what? If I hadn't watched Akira when I was 9 years old, this would have done things to me.
If this movie had ended with a bunch of giggling Gamora clones walking around and melting everyone.
Oh, Jesus!
Tony Stark screaming like a maniac, looking at a giant Pepper Potts.
You're talking end of Evangelion.
Yeah.
God. Yeah, that would have been different. I would have been like, oh God, I'm seeing this in the theatrical way. This is not good for me.
Or imagine it went Devilman Crybaby on us.
Oh Jesus! Yeah, and I'm coming off
in some ways.
I'm coming off the heels of Crybaby, and oof, you almost had me. But oof, I'm not seeing characters with their where they're being like pranced around the streets with
on sticks.
Well, yeah, on sticks with their homes on fire. Oof, that was rough. Holy cow!
That's another episode pick for me someday. I guarantee it. So, any other points you want to touch on for the movie?
I did want to touch on the fact that there were times when I really felt for Thor. I haven't felt for Thor in a while. And
we touched on that because in Ragnarok, it seems like he barely touched on the death of his family and friends in that.
Yeah,
and that scene with Rocket, that's like maybe the best non-Thanos character building part.
That's what I really didn't like about Ragnarok. I know that's probably one of people's favorite Marvel films now, but
favorite Thor films.
Yeah, but I actually didn't. I liked Ragnarok. I think it was very fun and a great improvement over Dark World. But I also thought that there were certain beats and certain instances that they didn't let stay with the audiences,
like Odin and the friends being killed.
Odin and the friends. Oh God, the friends being killed. Oh man, I was actually really pissed by that.
Yeah, that took me by surprise because I knew I expected going in. Yeah, they're going to kill Odin, then just tell us so unceremoniously. Yeah,
and then Asgard being destroyed, and
I like
kind of playing it off as a joke.
With Korg.
Yeah, I loved Asgard, but seeing it get wiped out like that and just kind of using it as a joke, as the cherry for the joke, it kind of felt like, man, thanks. I really wanted to sit with this feeling for a second.
It is funny to go from that. Then the opening scene of Infinity War was like, here, Chris.
Yeah, that felt a little better, and I think that was done intentionally. But it was seeing Thor feel really bad about not having anyone in his life.
Yeah, interesting. Somebody pointed interesting exchange where Thor's like, making this way we could kill him. He's like, I've got nothing to lose, and then Rocket realizes himself like, I've got plenty to lose, and then you get to the end, and that was the part that fucked me up, where Rocket's just quietly going, no,
yeah,
and he doesn't even know all about all the others yet.
Of course, you saw the director revealing
Groot's last line. Yes, for those who don't know, Groot does say one last "I am Groot" to Rocket before he dies, and James Gunn, because he wrote the Guardians part, and apparently he does have English versions of every "I am Groot," so Vin Diesel knows how to emote it. Groot's last line to Rocket was "Dad."
Oh man. Learning that was kind of rough.
He made it worse before because he confirmed the new baby teenage Groot is actually not the same as the original. The original actually did die.
Oh, that's a shame.
But the cherry is that I'm pretty sure almost everyone who is purged will be brought back because... So, Chris, that's one of the other things I want to talk about. What are your theories? Because that's the big thing. What are your theories about what direction Avengers 4 will go in? If you have any.
I think characters will come back. I don't think they'll come back until the very end, but I also think it might be a swan song for a couple of the core characters. This particular movie was based around.
Can you say it one more time?
Yeah. The theme was sacrifice and what you're willing to. Can you still hear me?
Now I can. Just keep going.
Okay. The theme was sacrifice, and Thanos, being the guy who's willing to sacrifice everything to get what he wants, won. And obviously the heroes were like, maybe we should pull our punches just a little bit so we can be the good guys that we are. I don't think Avengers 4 is going to have that. I think Avengers 4, there's going to be a couple of core Avengers really nutting up and saying, we have to do what needs to be done. For our loved ones, not just for the universe, but for those who were unfairly taken away against their will.
Yeah. I have three factors that I think of. One, I think it's definitely going to involve time travel, because that would probably be the only way short of getting the whole gauntlet to correct it. And if it starts out with just because you noticed it was mostly just the original team who survived, along with Rocket and Nebula. So maybe I know some people are wondering if it'll revisit past scenes. I would kind of love if. My biggest complaint about the battle scenes, even though they were fun, was that I was hoping for one with everyone. Because for the plot's sake, they're mostly split into 3 or 4 groups.
Yeah.
And I would love for Avengers 4 to end or get one brief thing where it's just imagine they have to alter the New York battle and then Thanos and everybody else are there.
Oh, I knew going into Infinity War that they were going to be split the entire movie. I'm wondering,
how long will it take in 4 before everybody comes back? What if there are some who don't get revived until everything's done?
Yeah, that's going to be hard. I actually don't think... I'm not so certain time travel is going to be the thing that brings everybody back. I personally think that... You've seen Full Metal Alchemist, right?
Equivalent exchange?
Yeah, no. I think I think those who have perished, quote unquote, I think they're stuck in the truth. I think they're stuck in
that is a theory that they're not dead, but they're in some other reality. Because people are looking to Doctor Strange is the big breadcrumb right now because he's the one. He said like we're in the only outcome where we'll win, and people are noting like where he tells Thanos, "Don't kill Tony, and I'll give you the stone." Like, it's apparently Tony is very important to this happening, which leads me to think like they're going to kill him in that. Like that's going to be a big sacrifice and a bookend. He started this whole universe. He'll end this phase of it. And, he probably feels so much guilt at this point, especially, Peter was becoming a surrogate son. He had to watch him die.
It's quite possible. Like anything can happen at this point.
Yeah.
Especially with, all the people who we thought were not going to die.
Yes, died, they played us.
But only because
there's still one more movie.
Yeah, well, if they didn't let it drop that all these characters are getting sequels, then I would totally be on edge about.
Or if they killed off one of the originals, like Thor or Cap.
Well, they killed off Sam Jackson, but you're right.
No, one of the main title characters.
You're right.
The fact that, but I'm legit wondering, like, I don't know if you should take little kids to see this. Like, I'm gonna imagine, like, if you imagine like a little 6-year-old who like Spider-Man or Black Panther is their favorite, they aren't keeping track of what comes next, and then the end happens.
Yeah.
I would legit say if you have little kids, wait until the second one is out, and then go see this and immediately see 2.
Oh, you see Loki's neck snap in the first 5 minutes.
I'm talking about being traumatized by their favorite hero dying.
Well, like a lot of kids like Thor. I mean, I'm sorry, a lot of kids like. I'm just saying.
Of fangirls like Loki too.
Oh, how many fangirls do you think are kids?
I don't know, actually.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm just saying that popular favorites die very fast.
Yeah.
So
we got a lot of. Well, I expect they're going to have to reveal the title and some trailers before it comes out. So we'll start to get some ideas. I'm guessing maybe towards the end of this year because the sequel's coming out in May.
Sure.
And they have been saying like, we're not holding off. We're holding off on that. We're holding off on the title because they would say all along like people are like, why aren't you telling us the title? And I'm like, basically anything we can tell you about Avengers 4 spoils Infinity War. Now we know why, because there's a lot of variables up in the air, and the moment they start dropping details is when we'll start to get some idea of where things are going. My guess, because the last thing I'll say is, the thing people point out about the trailers, instead of the Avengers will return or so-and-so will return, Thanos will return. So I'm like, I guess it goes without saying, when he finds out they're going to be doing something to undo his life's work, he's going to make one more offensive.
Well, he's got to go get his shit repaired, his gauntlet repaired. So,
but I think it still worked because he warped away at the end.
Oh, he warped away. Like, I think individually the stones still work. I think I just don't think they.
I did notice the gauntlet looked very like burned, and his arm was scarred. Like, and not to mention Thor stabbing him, he probably needs to recuperate. So I don't know how they'll factor that in if he finds a way to heal by the time. Because I think my actual favorite action scene wasn't the big Wakandan one, but it was when Tony and company took him on. That was fantastic.
Yeah, that was a fun one. Like,
and also the big one, one last fake out when he stabbed Tony. I'm like, here we go. Oh,
yeah, that was crazy. Like seeing Thanos like throw a moon at everybody. That was some Final Fantasy shit.
Oh yeah. I can hear you now. So,
what do you need me to do?
I think after we just finish this in our game talk, we'll disconnect and start a new call for the main thing. Okay. If you send me your audio, you'll be fine. I'm just trying not to interrupt it much. So anything else about Infinity War?
Let's see. I think that's really about it. I've had fun. I think it's a good movie. If you're just jumping in onto the Marvel train,
don't start here.
No, don't start here. Marathon your way up through like the main core titles first.
And are there still some you haven't seen?
Guardians Volume 2.
Okay, so basically the only thing with that is who Mantis is, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you can skip a couple, honestly. You can skip
some of the sequels.
Yeah.
I will say one of my favorite things that I've touched on in the past, first movie to have all 3 best girls in one movie. Mantis, Shuri, and Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, that was fun. That was very fun.
That I'm guessing we'll see more of Shuri and Okoye in the sequel.
Oh, absolutely.
And M'Baku, he's alive.
Yeah, he's still alive too.
I bet we'll have more of a story point, because I'm guessing maybe some of it will deal with the data she got from Vision before he died.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, and you still, you probably still place Black Panther above this, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, this was good. It wasn't a favorite of mine, but it did give me a good a good range of feels. And
it sticks out in terms of just its overall vibe too.
Yeah, it had, and I think the theme itself was strong. Yeah, had a good time.
Cool. So go see it, but see everything else first.
Yes.
All right, my turn, and this isn't our main topic, but I have kind of gotten hooked on a very recent PS4 release, also available on Steam, and it's been a very pleasant surprise for me considering the first game, and that is Ni no Kuni 2.
I'm going to build a kingdom where everyone can live happily ever after.
Tell me, Ben.
Now,
yes.
I want to ask you first, did you ever play the first game?
Yes, I did. Actually, that's a lie. Serena played the first game, and I watched her play it, and we had a good time.
Okay, that's an interesting thing because that was actually back when I brought it up a couple of times, but from like 2011 to 2016, or to early last year actually, I did freelance game reviews for some sites, and the one I did the most for, they would send me free copies of games sometimes just for reviews. Ni no Kuni was one of them.
Oh wow!
And I honestly wish I liked it more than I did because first off, it looked fantastic, both because the developer Level 5 has a great pedigree with like games like Dark Cloud, Dragon Quest, Professor Layton, huge amount of stuff. But the big thing, one of the big selling points, was the involvement of people from Studio Ghibli.
Yeah.
Because the character design, huge, the classic Miyazaki look. Some of the backgrounds are there. I think Joe Hisaishi did music for it. And he did do music for this. I'm looking for the sequel. I'm looking at it. And it's just, I just wish I liked playing it more because I found the battle system kind of clunky. I found the actual gameplay and like the whole like collecting the emotion stuff very basic. I'm like, it's a cute story at its core, but I wish I was more engaged with actually playing it. And Ni no Kuni 2, I gotta say, it feels like, I know there were other people who liked it more, but still the same issues, and it feels like Level 5 generally took the criticism to heart here. I'm enjoying this a lot more so far.
That's good.
Granted, I'm only about 6 hours in, and so we've talked about how your emotions went with Final Fantasy 15, so we'll see what happens. But so far, very positive impression. Now, interesting thing, so it's not a reboot, but I think they consciously made it very newcomer friendly, because it's the same, parallel fantasy world as the first game, but hundreds of years later.
Oh, wow.
So far, none of the characters I've seen have connections to the previous ones. Mm-hmm. There's like a neat thing where, as one of the, I'll get to that, but there's a puzzle early in the game where you're reading about this legend, and I realize that is referencing the heroes and basic plot of the first game, which has gone down in history over here.
So are you planning on doing a review of this at some point, like on YouTube or something?
Probably not, but if you play it and want to, we can. I know you've brought that up in the past.
Yeah,
I don't think I'll do that with Xenoblade, but I think you'd like this. And just other aspects, it is, like, the first one was already gorgeous. This is even more, like, not just because of the PS4's increased power, but it always runs at 60 FPS beautifully, even during cutscenes. And if you play it on PC and PS4 Pro, it does have 4K support. Okay. And the character designs they emote well, they animate well, voice acting solid. I love the fact that these games go for like a British cast.
Yeah, that's been a thing lately.
Level 8 did that with other games like Dragon Quest. And Xenoblade, obviously. That's always.
So Dragon Quest was level 5? I thought that was Square Enix.
They did 8, the one on PS2.
Okay.
It's been different developers otherwise. I'm trying to remember if they're doing the new one that's coming out, but I barely played that series.
Yeah.
But Xenoblade 1 and 2 have European actors because the first one was originally only localized for Europe. But they kind of kept that tradition. Well, so other things about it. It does. I will say the overarching plot seems kind of basic so far, but not to a degree where it's unengaging or anything. Yeah. I will say this has one of the most interesting first 10 minutes of a game because I've gotten 4 characters so far. I know that your party eventually has 6. You get the first 2 right away and 2 more very quickly after that. But the main 2 characters are the first 2 you get, where the idea is the main gimmick here is that in this parallel world, I don't think Earth is a big focus here this time. Ding Dong Dell, which is run by, cat people and mice people as well. And as you learn about history, it turns out there's some racial tension between the cat and mice. So right after the Cat King dies and his son's about to take the throne, the main character, this little, very androgynous cat boy named Evan, his mouse advisor stages a coup, killing his staff and just stealing the throne for themselves to stop the mice from being trod on, pretty much. So Evan escapes, and right when this happens, we start out in our world, and the president is driving to a summit in some city, and his name is Roland, and we see him notice a nuke fly into the city he's driving to and blow it up. He is not killed, but his car turns over, and while he's sitting there hurt, he somehow warps into the other world, but for some reason he's like half his age. Same presidential suit, but like a more handsome 20s Bishonen hero. And I gotta say, it's pretty amazing where when he notices, he doesn't like freak out and feel his face like, what is happening? He just goes, well, you look at that. Anyway, and he runs into the room trying to figure out where he is, sees Evan about to be killed by rat guards, and whips out his pistol and guns them down.
Oh, wow.
And basically, he's like, I have no idea if I can go back to my place, but for now, I'll help. Because Evan flees and decides, I'm going to start a new kingdom rather than... And Evan's almost kind of... He's not a pacifist, but he has the overarching goal of him right now and is set up this new kingdom called Evermore and try and use it to unite the other kingdoms and bring world peace, which I have no idea where that will go in the end, because other characters even point out to him, you're not the first to try this. Do you realize how foolish it is? And actually, to the point where like one of the main characters telling me that he's like, you could be very right, but I'd never forgive myself if I didn't try.
Yeah.
And they're like, I can't get mad at that.
Yeah, you can't.
And so that's where that plays into the game as well so far, where a little bit in, you start unlocking... There's kind of three fundamental gameplay systems. The main one is traditional JRPG, overworld, towns, and real-time combat in a little area, kind of like some of the Tales of games or Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
One cool thing is that you can have a party of 3 and switch between and who you play as of any of them at any time.
That's cool.
Kind of like the Final Fantasy 15 with the new updates. And they all have different ideas, approaches, because Evan is more about magic, Roland is more melee and projectile attack. Then you have a girl who's kind of the thief, and her dad who's kind of the big, burly, slow tank.
Gotcha.
And outside of that, there are some sections where it turns into an RTS pretty much, where... for the overworld, the RTS, and the kingdom section, which I'll get to, the graphic style switches to a more like zoomed out chibi look. I'm not big of the chibi look, but I think it does help pack in more detail. And it's a thing where you're running around with Evan with up to 4 units that you use the L and R buttons to have them circle around you. And there's kind of a Pokemon rock, paper, scissors elemental advantage there with them and enemy troops.
Love it.
And you can also hold a button to temporarily give them more attacks, then recharge that meter. Or use points on like attacks, like here's a paralyzing thing, here's missiles from the sky, because you have Sky Pirate. Like you can tell it's Ghibli because you get Studio Sky Pirates really early.
Of course. And
that's pretty fun too. I feel like those go a little long, but they're a kind of unique take on it. And the other thing that I was aware of going in, because I've heard many people talking about it, is the kingdom management thing, which isn't so much like a risk reward thing, but basically when you set up your kingdom Evermore, you start with... It's almost like a mobile game, but there are no microtransactions, where over time you automatically accumulate a currency exclusive for the kingdom.
Sure. And
you can spend that to open new facilities, upgrade them, and almost all the side quests, and even some of the main ones, revolve around recruiting people to move to your kingdom with different skills.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so far I found like some of the exiled cat people. I went to the first kingdom you help out. I can already tell there'll be some fun setups. It's like a Chinese village full of dog people where all their laws revolve around rolling dice. So it's like people are decided like guilty or innocent based on roll the dice.
That sucks.
The casino is very popular. They base like, should we raise taxes on a roll of dice? And so the subplot is there is, how would political corruption work? Rigged dice. There's some fun stuff there. And so I've gotten a bunch of dog people there too. And it actually will help to point it out where it's like, you can technically put any person on any facility you want, but they all excel at a certain area. So it's like, some of them are like, over ongoing like resource collecting things. Like, this person's be good at mine. Send them to this mine to get resources. And because there's also, crafting and stuff like that. But the most important one is stuff like, here's your weapon facility, here's your armor facility, here's your spell facility, where if you assign someone to research, like being able to strengthen your existing stuff or make new ones, then there's a timer there. And as long as the game is on, you can play it, or you can do what I'm doing, just step away from the TV for a bit. They'll continue to work on it. And doing those and building new facilities and upgrading the old ones upgrades your rank, which will eventually allow you to, make the kingdom bigger, make the facilities bigger. There's a constant sense of reward there, and it's really addicting and satisfying.
That's cool. All right. Well, let me ask you, does it come with an art book?
Oh, I rented it.
Oh, okay.
I do gameplay for a lot of games.
Okay. Well, I was asking because I know the first game had like a giant art book. Like,
okay, hang on. I'm gonna Google if they put one out. They are selling the art book separately on Amazon.
Oh, really?
It's not out till August. It wouldn't surprise me if the collector's... I'm seeing what the collector's edition includes. Maybe it comes with a smaller art book.
Now...
Doesn't say.
The first art book for Ni no Kuni went... It was a special edition. Let me see if I can Google it myself.
Okay.
Ni no Kuni. And that art book was super expansive. Like, it wasn't just... this is how these characters are drawn.
There's descriptions?
There was world-building shit in this book. Like,
Ghibli,
it was huge.
I will note, apparently Ghibli wasn't as immensely involved this time, other than illustration and keeping the art style. But it doesn't feel... I can't... If you didn't know that, like, I couldn't tell. Like, Level 5 did a good job of preserving the vibe of the first one.
Yeah. Now, the first... Let me see. It was called The Wrath of the White Witch Wizards Edition.
Okay.
Actually, that might not be right either. That is... let me just take a good look. Yeah, this book was massive. I'm not even sure if they even sell it anymore. Like, on eBay, when it first came out on eBay, it was selling for a buttload of cash.
Yeah, well, the first game was a while ago, so it's very likely out of print.
Yeah, wow. I wish that they had it. Like, it's on Amazon right now. It's 340 pages.
Wow.
It's Jesus. It doesn't even have a price. It has no price.
Maybe you'll want to pre-order this one.
Yeah.
I guess you'll want to play the game first, but trust me, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So yeah, so far I am really digging it. Maybe not enough to say it's like one of the best JRPGs I've ever played, but it has depending on how the whole game shapes up, it has a shot at making one of my favorites of the year. We'll see how I do, if like I'm feeling bored by the end, or if the story takes a weird turn. But so far, I'm like, this is awesome.
Excellent.
So yeah, I recommend. And if you really like the first, not just Chris, but anybody who also liked the first, yeah, definitely check it out. Because speaking as someone who liked most things about the first, except how it played, this is a big step up while still keeping the charm. Like the story has a lot of innocence while still having dark edges to it.
Sure.
In classic Ghibli form. So yeah, that does it for our main things. Now we're going to save and talk about our main thing.
Okay.
He was one tough, humongous, but we finally nabbed him because our strength is teamwork. They've hunted down dragons in every corner of the world. Here's to the greatest hunting duo of all time, to Guisto and Lian Chu.
If they helped to pay the rent, it would be even better.
So this is kind of part 2 of an impromptu theme month I suggested to Chris, where I said we've had some fun. Like sometimes we pick very obvious things, but sometimes we pick surprise things. It could be like topics, like emotional moments. But I also thought it'd be fun. Like I feel like anybody like us into cartoons and media as much as we are, everybody's bound to have at least one thing that like is generally not well known, but means a lot to them for one reason or another. So we've had our picks have reflected that. Chris picked Little Nemo last episode, and I'm picking something that I'm like, yeah, Little Nemo is obscure, but this in the States, I would always be surprised to find someone who's like, oh yeah, I know that. So we are going to talk primarily the TV show. It is started in France in 2004 animated show Dragon Hunters.
Yeah.
And French, Chasseurs des Dragons, which I think means the same thing, and I do not know if I'm pronouncing chasseurs right. So, interesting thing, this was... I've done some research on the show, and apparently it was over in Europe and actually the Middle East. It was a huge hit. Which is... So, it was initial season of 26 episodes, because often new shows get that, or 13. And a few years later, in 2008, it got both a theatrical CG movie and an additional 26 episode season, which I assume was spurred by to help promote the movie, which we'll talk about. But the main ball of our conversation is going to revolve this show, because I discovered and fell in love with this show purely by chance. Now, it was like 2006. I was in college, and Cartoon Network was they always have a couple foreign shows on, either from Canada or other European countries in French. Anime's its own thing. And I remember there were a couple of them that they, instead of putting on any of their main blocks, they put them into and they still do this sometimes, they just put it into random morning slots, often with little promotion. And I remember seeing a brief commercial where it was just like a couple random shows, and this one thing of one of the main characters, Lian Chu, who'll talk about like sticking a pole out a window and seeing it get burned because of the dragon scene outside. And I thought nothing of this. I'm like, well, I've never heard of this. Nobody's heard about it, whatever. But later I was browsing Cartoon Network's video site, like most places nowadays, but back then they also had a place where they would show select episodes of their most popular shows and a lot more episodes of lesser known shows for free. Dragon Hunters was one of them. I thought the lead characters looked fun, so I clicked the first episode and went, oh, this this is kind of awesome. Before I knew it,
Yeah.
I'd watched all 26 episodes. But because it was placed in this kind of slot with like little promotion, I think they only aired like 4 or 5 episodes before canceling it there.
Wow.
It never even really got a shot. So I had to, I watched everything that I could on their site of that 26, and then I tracked down, because it did get a DVD release, and I bought all 5 volumes they released, but it only went up to episode 17, which bummed me out, because there were some episodes I really liked in those latter 9 or so. And thankfully, a couple years later, I'm not gonna lie, I did track the first season down on BitTorrent. Somebody put it up, and I noticed one of the uploads, they all had the Cartoon Network logo in the corner. So I'm like, some network guy wanted this leaked. Thank you.
Yeah.
The ones I have now are actually rips from the German box set, because they have a German audio track and text for like the credits and stuff. But you can also you can't find. I remember back in the day when during the heyday of iTunes TV show purchases, man, put them on iTunes, and they did put them on iTunes and Amazon to buy like 3 years ago, which I bought at some just because I wanted to, and I don't think it's available there anymore. But the show has previously been on Netflix and Hulu in the past. Which is actually, the Netflix is how I finally saw the second season when they dubbed it second season years later, and we'll get to that. And Chris, so I had mentioned this to you, and I uploaded a couple episodes on like private sites like Mega and said just watch a couple of these, and I think you actually said you were kind of aware of this show.
Like I didn't know the name, but I've seen these designs before, and I've seen them a lot. It's very weird because I was aware that these characters existed. I didn't know where they were from. I didn't know what the title of the show was from, but their character designs are very familiar.
Which is funny, because I don't have any recollection of seeing these guys outside of me looking into the show.
Yeah, like they've been on like people have been passing these designs on around net before. The show is created by Arthur Quack?
Yes, French guy, and just a funny little thing. I am probably the only guy who freaked out, because I mentioned I watched some of the Netflix Skylanders cartoon, and I actually do enjoy it, and many of those episodes are directed by him.
Oh wow, okay, that makes sense. Okay, all right, because he's like a background artist as well as like as well as like the showrunner for Dragon Hunters.
I think he created it with one other guy, and the same background artist makes sense, because I loved the environments in the show.
Oh, I totally dug the environments in that.
We'll talk more about that. But so you think you've just seen it by you become aware of it by word of mouth, but only the character designs.
Only by the character designs. I didn't really think much of it, and then you happen to talk about it, and then when you showed me the link, I was like, I've seen this before. I know I've seen this before. I didn't watch it like entirely as a kid, but you
would not have been a kid when this came out.
Or I mean, I didn't watch it when it came out, though, not as a kid, but I know of this show is what I'm saying.
Okay. So let me just get into, normally we don't do that much like setting up what a thing is when we talk about it, but because this is so obscure, I'm going to just lay it out for people who if you're a listener who was aware of this show before I brought it up, please write to us.
Got it.
So technically it is it does set in a standard feudal medieval fantasy world. The big gimmick is the structure of the world. Imagine, the concept of the floating island, like Knuckles' home from Sonic, or that section from Avatar, the James Cameron movie with those floating rock formations.
Yeah.
That's the whole world. It is like hundreds of floating islands, some the size of a city, some like small enough for one person. And you get the vibe that like people have set up ridges and such to get around them, and others also have flying machines, because our main characters get around in a little pedal-powered helicopter thing called the St. George. So much like any medieval world, regardless of islands, it has a big dragon problem. And not just the winged fire-breathing kind. Like, they get very creative with the dragon designs and concepts. They are...
Yeah, there are invisible ones. There are ones that look like frogs. There are ones that...
are big and furry and are just more like Bigfoot.
Engulf themselves in the fire. Like, there's about as much love for the dragon designs here
and concepts.
and concepts than and what I've seen in like what was it? It's How to Train Your Dragon or something.
I would highly recommend this to the people who love the dragons from that franchise.
Yeah.
And It's also in service of technically every episode kind of has a monster of the day hook.
It does.
The interesting thing is, depending on the episode, sometimes the story revolves around the dragon way less. It is not weighed down by that concept. Some of them are just for little scenes to them have fun with these concepts. Some of them are very, like the second season, the open episode is about basically a were-dragon that scratches Lian Shu and he turns into one at night. Or wow. One that puts Guizhou to sleep with like a pheromone or like a gas, and he dreams about like the perfect life. And stuff. Like they get super. There's one that's like a ghost. That's just straight up like a ghost, and it's just very. That's part of the charm of it. Both these dragon concepts, and like we said, this world looks so. The background style, art style of this, I am in love with it.
Yeah, this is a very unique looking show. That's for sure.
Yeah, the character designs are also they kind of do give you that European vibe. They're very rounded, very exaggerated, but generally pretty appealing, I think. So the primary cast. What?
I can't get over Lian Chu's tiny head and his giant body.
No. I can't get over his legs. It's the same thing we talked about with Mitch and Paranorman, because I'm going to get to these characters. Lian Chu is huge, like 7 feet tall, muscular as hell, just huge, and like thick neck with tiny head and tiny spindly legs. In real life, he could not stand, and I just kind of love that because it kind of also reflects his personality.
Tiny spindly legs, tiny hands, and he's very soft spoken.
Yes, so these are they're basically technically 3, but more 2 main characters. This trio of, so obviously there's an industry for dragon hunting, kind of like bounty hunting and such. So it's these 2 guys, lifelong friends, Guizhou and Lian Chu. The episodes go into, they are both orphaned. Lian Chu, when he was a kid, lost his home to a dragon burning it down. He was the sole survivor. And Guizhou was apparently abandoned as a baby. Like, he has no idea. And they were raised in the same orphanage together, which they actually visit in one episode. And just a funny little quirk, their caretaker is named Mother Hubbard. But when they grew up, they took on, because they balanced each other out very well in terms of their skills. Guizhou is a very tiny little guy. His design and mannerisms remind me of Timon and Daxter.
I was just about to say Timon.
The goggles, especially.
Yeah, Timon. He is definitely Timon.
Yeah, and he has Daxter's goggles. I think Daxter's Timon inspired to begin with. He's quite cocky. Like, by all accounts, he is a douchebag, but I like the fact that there is more than that to him, because he is a coward. He is often a borderline con man. There are episodes and parts of the movie where he's making up a plan just to get away with some money. He's obsessed over money, and he's obsessed over contract writing. That one funny thing they touch on multiple times in the show, almost nobody in the world can read because it's medieval times. Guizhou can, and he used that to his full advantage. There's even an episode where he has a crisis of faith, and they're stranded by these clients on an island with a dragon. And Lian Chu's idea to cheer him up is go over and try and arrange a contract by himself. And he says something to the third guy, Hector. When he was a child, he didn't have many friends. He would just read contracts day and night.
That is the saddest thing and most apt thing for this character,
but
I swear.
He's also my favorite character.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to write my more notes about him. Yeah, and Lian Chu is also great because he is both a legit fantastic fighter, but he's also a sweetheart. He is the definition of a gentle giant. And not even in a way where he's stupid, like a mice and men kind of thing. Like, he just has compassion, and I remember there's an episode where we'll get to where they live. They're kind of permanent tenants at this inn, and it's an episode starting where there's a storm outside, and Guizhou's just pissed off, he's got cabin fever, we're not getting any contracts, we're not making any money, and Lian Chu's but we're just in here, it's warm and the food is good. He's okay with the small things. And there are many times where he's the one to keep Guizhou in check, but there are some times where Guizhou won't take his no for an answer, and Lian Chu just has to play along and deal with the inevitable shitstorm it causes. And the third one, but it's a more minor one, is Hector, because they actually have a little, I'm guessing you weren't big on this guy, because he's kind of a minion type. He is a little blue dragon himself, but the funny thing is, I think the idea is, they've never gone into how they met him and such, but I get the idea that he's kind of a runt. He can kind of talk, but it's very pidgin English and a lot of gibberish mixed in. He'll say his names and their names and go, I got a lot of random stuff. And often Guizhou just kind of sees him as you're the pedal power for flying the machine, and you carry the weapons. And
Hector was the point of the show that was kind of. He didn't sit well.
Well, it doesn't help that the first episode you'll watch was the only episode that's about Hector.
Okay.
Where he screened him like shit. He decides to leave and like live with a wild dragon, which doesn't go well for him.
Yeah.
But I mean, to be fair, he's still a minor part of the show as a whole. But I can guess, like, if that archetype bothers you as much as it did, then maybe it'll get you. But we also haven't talked about the two main side characters, Zaza and Jeneline. Because the gimmick is, because this kind of takes the same approach as stuff like Cowboy Bebop and Firefly, where yes, they're doing this cool job none of us could do in real life, but they are broke as hell. They only score the payload for one reason or another, like every 8 or 9 episodes. But the idea is they have been, tenants of this inn for years, and they have a huge tab for food and board. And the catch is the innkeeper, Jeneline, this huge German and like fierce lady, kind of like a Brunhilde type. She actually does have, like, even though she can be very aggressive to them, she is kind of in love with Guizhou, which she does not appreciate. But that's also to their benefit, because she can often give them lenience overall, even though she can be very angry at them from moment to moment. And her daughter, this, like, I think she had one of the birthdays is her. One of the episodes is her turning 10. Zaza, who is, kind of a spunky, adventurous girl, and something that Jeneline is mad about, both Zaza and her older daughter, Zoria, who pops on in a couple episodes, the guys have influenced them to take up dragon hunting, or in Zaza's case, be interested in it, which I think is really cute. And there are a couple side characters that show up. I won't go into it because we don't have that much time, but my favorite is, did you see any of the episodes with the old doctor?
The old doctor. I don't remember.
KO. I'll put a clip of him. The gimmick is he is legit, like, experienced and knowledgeable about, like, every species of dragon and ailment, but he is super nearsighted and absent-minded. So typically, every conversation starts off with, like, him examining the wrong person, getting everyone's gender wrong, and just interrupting, like, before I say anything else, can you go make me a sandwich? He's a lot of fun.
Okay.
And
you say he can't feel his legs anymore?
Yeah, but that's his chin.
Of course, I thought so. You see, I'm not used to dealing with horses.
He isn't a horse, Noble Ko. He's a human being.
Now listen here, are you trying to teach me my job?
No, of course not.
That's too bad. I could have used a refresher course.
what?
No, I thought you was talking about me, and I was like, I don't think I could do that.
You like sandwiches?
I do like sandwiches.
Yeah. So part of what makes this show work for me is, I've talked about, like, Guizhou is, by all accounts, a douche, but there's so many episodes, there's a good amount of episodes where stuff happens, he does stuff to make you realize what his real moral compass is, despite all the money and greed and cowardice. There's an episode, you said you didn't see it, it's a shame, because it's a good one. In battle, Lian Shu is poisoned by this barbed tail of a dragon before it dies. Yeah. And the doctor explains he's going to be gradually paralyzed and die. And the only known cure for this is this gland of this one dragon, only one left known to exist. So they have to journey there, and Guizhou has to kind of find a way to attack it.
Gotcha.
And he has a lot of cajoling, and he's, like, so hesitant at first, but there's some good emotional parts where he hears Lian Shu freaking out and, like, goes outside looking sad. There's some good emotional beats. But I'm trying to see. I've been speaking a lot so far. So do you have anything you want to say about your observations of what you saw?
I can tell there was a lot of imagination put into this show, and I do dig the dynamic between those 3 characters. The execution isn't for me, though. I found, like, on an entertainment level, I didn't really feel the vibe that you were feeling, and I was kind of interested as to what made this show special to you.
Hopefully I can make that make some more sense. So you watched that, and you watched, I can't remember the episodes, you watched some of the one about the monks, which I think that's a very funny episode, because the idea is these monks who are grow. Did you watch the part where they're doing the speech? And you say you just listened to it? I
just listened to it for the most for the most part. But I did. But there was one particular gag that I do remember in the very first episode where Lian Shu and Hector are basically they're basically trying to negotiate their contract, and they're giving this dude, like, the biggest, cheesiest grin as far as getting the gold, and he keeps going up in price. Yes. And there's this moment when Lian Shu just looks at Hector like, are we still doing this? Okay, we're still doing this.
Yes, like, Lian Shu's getting all nervous. He's kind of talking all dope, because one of Lian Shu's cute traits is that he has a bunch of proverbs. He'll just randomly say a little, like, rhyme, like, about the situation, but he gets super nervous in front of this crowd, and he asks Hector, and Hector's like, oh, it's easy, just do a smile, cheese. Yeah. so they do that, and the guy walks up like, all right, you drive hard bargain. We'll do like 50 gold pieces, and just keeps cutting back and forth. 100. He gets more nervous. 100, 200, and one of my favorite is when they do like the quick cuts them. That Hector is picking his nose for like half a second.
Jesus, yeah. It just keeps going. Like there are tiny. There are specific moments that I did like about this show. Overall, it did kind of miss me in a lot of places. So I did recognize that this show, people who are fans of this show, they're fans of this show.
I am among them.
Yeah, so I'm like, what is the essence of this show is what I'm trying to get at, because you sent me a clip
from the movie
of the movie.
We will get to that.
Well, I just want to say that I was fucking down because I saw
like the best section of the movie, though, other than one scene after that. The movie has other good parts, but that is where it peaks, I would say. We'll get to it.
Okay.
But part of what I love is I do love, like I said, the dynamics, and I kind of wish you would watch more because maybe you would see like some of this. There's an episode where Guizzo finds out about this. They get a customer who he looks all raggedy and hermit-like, but he pays with this amazing coin worth a lot. Guizzo finds out about this place that has one of the richest vaults in the world. But apparently they don't have any dragon problems. So he has an idea. He has the doctor discover a potion that can kind of temporarily mutate creatures to be more like feral and savage. It's basically night dragons from Zootopia. And they go to this island, acting like they're just passing through and getting a room for the night. And it's already funny because the whole thing looks like a rundown third world country. And when they ask their king, like, why do you live like this? Well, you have this money. He's like, the money's too important to spend it. And so Guizzo's idea is, when they go to bed at night, feed Hector the potion, and he'll play along with them, and they take him in and get a reward. Yeah. Which happens, but Feral Hector goes for their vault and eats all the gold. Oh. So they are literally now actual paupers, and guys get jack shit. And Lian Chu, the whole episode, is telling Guizzo, like, this is not a good idea, this won't work out. And Guizzo's like, relax, buddy. Yeah, and by the episode, it's like Guizzo has, because they also tested it on a pig at the farm where the inn is. And by the end, he's ravaged the place, and now Guizzo's tab is even higher. It ends with them having like wait tables.
Oh boy, man!
But also for the episode you watched, that's one of the episodes where they do land a load of gold. There are a couple where they do get some, but you get the sense it's still never enough for whatever gargantuan build they have.
It seems like that they're forever trying to climb out of debt, like in real life.
Yeah, good luck, buddies.
I am I'm as we're talking, I'm thumbing through like a lot of fan art of this show, and
I was gonna bring it up. There's most of it is of Guizzo, and I gotta say, for such a wormy character, there seem to be a lot of fangirls for him.
Oh, definitely. Like I'm looking through
he's
like
the hunkiest dude.
Like I got my safe search on right now.
You're still seeing some stuff.
I'm gonna keep it there.
You're still seeing like some girls stuff, like a bunch of girl OCs are like, I'm Guizzo's girlfriend.
I'm seeing a very handsome Guizzo here.
I will say, on the handful of occasions where you see him with the goggle helmet off, he has cool hairstyle. Like you would think he was balding or something, but no.
I'm seeing one where Lian Chu like has his helmet off, and it's like blonde. I mean Lian Chu, because he has his not helmet.
He has a little ponytail.
Yeah, like it's down or something, and it's blonde. I don't know. It's very specific. It's probably a specific episode. Never mind. Don't worry about that. But yeah, like there is.
Wait, is he wearing a blonde wig?
He's probably wearing a blonde wig.
That's an episode where there's a great concept. It's kind of, there isn't much continuity to it other than referencing characters they've met. But there's an episode where they help these dwarves with a dragon but botch at the end. There's a sequel episode. The dwarves put a bounty on their head because they're so pissed. And Big Guizzo has the idea of how to solve it. We'll disguise ourselves as other bounty hunters. And, but the gimmick is, once they get there, the dwarf chief decides, a bunch of people have taken the contract and run off, so I'm coming with you. And so they have to keep up this facade even at the inn. And really all it is putting a wig on Lian Chu, a mustache on Guizzo, and dressing Hector as a sheep. And Guizzo goes from his high-pitched Brooklyn voice to, we are the best in the business, sir. We will strap them up in a jiffy.
So, you say you're bounty hunters?
The very best in the business. Just tell us what those three scoundrels look like and we'll catch them in a blink.
It's a good one.
Cute.
I'm trying to see... What are some other things do you have questions about or observations, or do you want me to talk to why I love this show?
Well, we're bouncing around, and that's fine because I'm looking at the fan art, I'm looking at like all the production stills. There's a ton of heart that that the creator wanted to push into the show.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing it.
But the execution didn't stick with you.
It didn't stick with me. I want to know, like, I want to feel. I'm not sure if I can feel what you're. I'm not sure if I can feel what you're feeling, but I want to get there.
I wrote a list. One, I discussed that I like the world and creature concepts. But two, this is something you touched on too. That you like that when shows and cartoons and stuff take time to breathe and establish stuff, and the show has a lot of when there are scene transitions. I like the backing score. It's kind of, I'm sure it was done electronically, but it's very like adventurous fantasy style. There's just one main theme, like dun 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 dun, and a lot of establishing them flying to St. George through these clouds and seeing all these islands, or even when they're in like a natural village or at the inn. Like there are a lot of, maybe not during the scenes, there's a ton of quiet moments, but the setup, there's always a little bit of take a moment to breathe, look at these cool environments, and get a vibe of where you're heading.
Yeah,
and I know, like you talked about how Hector was a turnoff for you, and I mean, I barely think about Hector because he's just so minor in the grand scheme of things. There's only one, I think in each season he only gets one episode where he's actually the main character.
Gotcha.
But Guisto and like the actual human characters, especially Guisto, make this show for me. I think he is like legit really well written and have some really fun exchanges, particularly with Lian Chu and Jeneline, because Jeneline is so good at not taking Guisto's shit. Like there's an episode, my favorite episode, because I also talked about I'll get to it, but there's an episode where Lian Chu goes missing and Guisto has just found a client with a very lucrative contract, but when he says give me a minute, I'll go find him, he's like, nope, I have no time. Guisto knocks him out and stuffs him in a closet.
Oh wow.
At the end, when they come back after their Lian Chu's thing is done, Jeneline says, yeah, he woke up and I let him go. And he's like, what do you mean? He was like the client. And Jeneline is like,
yeah, well, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to run. Maybe I wasn't able to hold on to your client, but I would like to hold on to mine. I especially like my clients because they do something yours don't. They pay me.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot of fun little, and just, I'm talking about like from episode to episode, they just have a lot of fun concepts. Like there are a handful of episodes where like Zaza goes with them, and typically it's like if it's a revolving character she cares about, like the Lian Chu one. There's one where like she basically blackmails them. Like she finds they get shipped a bunch of corn, and she finds a map and a bounty in one of them, and has to be like, yeah, I'll come with, and she kind of sneaks along. And another one where Jeneline is this rich guy visits. He's like, your stuff's exquisite. Can I get you to make something for my wedding? And he's like, sure. Okay, get this type. Then it turns out because of that type's biology, you have to cook it immediately after killing it, or they'll spoil. So they have to take her along, take Jeneline along with our pots. She's not happy about it.
Yeah, that's inconvenient.
And at the end, they're like, so what do you think about it? And I love the fact that like, cause she's a big lady, and she's like, oh, I'm not doing that again. I must have lost like 20 pounds. I don't want to do that. And just stuff like that. And I think a lot of these character exchanges, like Guizo by far has the most dialogue in this show. Yeah. And so I think it helps that so much of what he says is genuinely funny. And I like the voice acting in the show a lot. Now, I'd gone with you. I hadn't heard of the people in the show. And interesting thing, when you watch the credits, they only credit the people responsible for the main 5 characters. So,
okay.
But I brought up with you the main exposure we both had with 2 of them. We have 2 of the 3 Samurai Pizza Cats in this show.
Yeah.
Speedy Cervici is Guizdo, which you can very much hear. He just kind of put on a different accent, kind of. And you couldn't tell, but Jeneline is Polyester, the girl cat.
That's cute.
Which is hard to tell because I think I rewatched that show. Polly's voice is high and Jeneline's is low. That woman has range. Oh, she's also the mom in Arthur and DW's mom.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It was a Canadian cast because the show was made in France, and we know France and Canada pretty closely linked. Zaza's voice, I didn't realize anything that I was really aware of. Lian Chu is funny because he doesn't have a lot of big roles, but he's keeping busy. I looked him up on YouTube. He's also a theater actor. And but funny thing to note, he had apparently bit roles and stuff like Days of Future Past and The Aviator. Like I think he's like just kind of a character actor who'll pop up for one small bit. And for the one that made me giddy is that he voices a bunch of various side characters in the Assassin's Creed games.
So this. I'm looking at the Wikipedia now. So this is Harry Stanjovsky.
For saying it right, yeah. These are not names that I think most people go like, oh, them. But yeah, Guido is Rick Jones. Sonya Ball is Jeneline. Oh, Rick Jones also his Hector. Annie Bovard is Zaza, and this guy Harry Stanjovsky. And it's a shame that I haven't heard this guy much because I really like Lian Chu's voice acting. I remember. Just a quick tangent. I'm like one of the only guys to upload clips to the show in English, and this was like back in the early days of YouTube because I ripped them straight from the DVDs. And one of them, people were asking, "Is that Samurai Jack's voice?" And I thought, I was like, no, but he does kind of sound like Phil Lamar doing Jack's voice. And I think one neat thing about it is, this is hard to do. You could get the vibe that they're playing an Asian character by the mannerisms, but they're not doing a racist accent.
Yeah.
I think that's probably very hard to pull off. And this guy's been acting for a while, so I get that he would have the chops for it.
Hector's left Guizhou. He's gone back to the wild, like all real dragons.
Yeah, it sounded more like he's shooting more for not wise old sage, but slightly educated and a little bit more spiritual.
Isn't stupid.
But more spiritual than anything. That's what came across to me.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing that I love is when the show does touch on why Guizhou and Lianshu need each other. Because at the end of the Lianshu poison episode, for a second they think he's dead, and Guizhou breaks down crying like, "Please, I'm nothing without you." And I just love that, and the fact that, like I said, the episode you saw, because you think that you think Lianshu's got this great contract, and Guizhou's heartbroken over that because he was already thinking he was worthless. He's like, "Oh, you negotiate better."
Yeah, I caught that. I was like, "What is wrong with you, man?"
Well, because Guizhou was having a crisis of conscience, thinking I'm
yeah.
But then the catch is when they go out, the man, that guy who you thought was being imposed, like, hey, did you look at the small print? Turns out Lianshu totally missed it. There was an addendum. We can only pay you when you're dead.
Yeah.
And then when Guizhou's so happy, and then they go, sorry to interrupt, gentlemen, but we have to kill you now. And they resume running.
Yeah, I didn't quite get that joke because I was like, but you still have to pay them when they're dead, though. You still have to put the money in their bank. They can't spend it, but
if you think about it, they could just toss the contract because the dead are the only one who know about it. They were already trying to kill them. I don't think that kind of corruption is beneath them.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so I'm just trying to talk about. So yeah, I think I just love. There are other small things, like I'm looking right here. Just a lot of little touches. One thing I love is that there are a lot of episodes that are they do the thing of starting like right at the tail end of some other adventure, including that one where they kill this like fire dragon.
Yeah,
they use Hector as bait, and Lianshu tips over an island of water and just burns all the fire off, and it's just a skeleton.
Yeah, that dude. Yeah, when I saw that happen, I was like, "This dude is stacked. I don't think he's going to have very much problems." He cannot. He's not skipping he's not skipping arm day, chest day, back day. He ain't skipping leg day. He ain't skipping neck day. That's for sure. Because
But like, there's another one, like the one I'm talking about with him being poisoned. I love that it starts with all three of them are dangling off the edge of a cliff. We just holding on to Lianshu, and Lianshu's holding on to Hector. Hector's holding them both, and this big dragon staring them down. And the way they get out of it is Hector in dragon language tells the dragon a joke, which makes him laugh so much he blows up.
Oh,
which pisses Guizhou off because it was a case of you got to show the body, get the bounty.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite episode, which is the Conjunction of Three Moons, it's the same thing happens where Guizhou's being chased and circled by this little raptor-like dragon, like, come on, get out and help. And Lianshu's just sitting on this rock like, I don't feel like it, Guizhou. And thankfully the dragon trips and falls off the cliff, but Guizhou's still pissed, like, we missed another bounty. Lianshu just isn't talking, he just looks solemn, and then when they go home, he sits on the cliff, on the edge of, a cliff by a tree and just stares. There's a cute moment where Zaza comes out and tries to talk. He's worried, she's like, we just cooked some food, you want some? And he's just shaking his head, do you want to be left alone? Just nods his head, and she's like, it's always good talking to you. And walks off. And then it hits Guizhou. It's the anniversary of the destruction of Lianshu's hometown, so they go back there. And the thing is, there's another, town has been built on top of it with different people. But Lianshu realizes that a dragon's going to come back on that same anniversary, and he just owes it to himself to protect it there. And there's a really great thing where he ends up not being able to kill the dragon, but he kind of lops. It's kind of gruesome, actually, because the action of the show isn't great, but gets the job done. He kind of nicks the dragon's elbow so that it just falls out the joints. So you get the sense that its claws are dead. And it just runs off not to return. And Guizhou runs out like, are you happy? But Lianshu just does this angry, I'll include in the show, he has this furious yell.
Lianshu, you are number one, the greatest in the world. Hey, you okay, pal? No! Letting off some steam, huh?
And it's just a neat thing to look at. It's not on the level of something where you look like the Guardians of the Galaxy about what they've lost, but even halfway through the episode where Guizhou is still mad about abandoning that lucrative contract, he goes and talks to Lianshu. He was just sitting there, and Lianshu's saying, there was nothing left. It was just ruins. And I try not to think about it, but it hurts too much. And Guizhou finally gets compassion and is like, I feel the same way about wondering where my family is. And it's a moment of letting you realize both Guizhou's good side and why these two are good for each other. They have a similar rough early life and vendettas against dragons and such. And I just love stuff like that. And not all the humor lands in the show as a whole. There's going to still be some like more kiddie slapstick, but so much of it is dialogue driven. I talk about how much I like Guizhou's voice and delivery, and when like 90% of your jokes revolve around him, I think that works really well.
Yeah.
And I wish you had been able to see it a little more, but there's some good stuff in the monk episode. Did you get to the point where they see how big the dragon is?
Yeah.
That's a great thing because the monk told him it's like 3 feet high. He was like, oh man, he turns to Guizhou, and Guizhou has a tendency to do like, I think it's alliterations where he says 2 words that start with the same thing. So he's like, mumble and midgets and stuff. And he's like, we can kill this in our sleep. But then he sees it's huge and he turns around. It's good timing because you see it gradually fly in the background with that sound like an aircraft. And he's like,
Say there, friend, ever hear of a 30-year-old decree that changed the units of measurement throughout the kingdom?
Decree? Have any of you heard of this decree?
Okay, so when you say the beast is about 5 feet tall, we're talking old feet now, not new feet, right?
New feet?
Exactly as I thought. Dear clients, you're gonna love this. It seems there has been a slight misunderstanding concerning the size of your dragon. I must therefore invoke Clause 5 of the contract binding us, namely, run for your lives!
There's another great thing going inside where he's like, admonishing them, and he's almost ready to leave, and then Lian Shu says, we shouldn't. But then Guizhou has a fantasy. It's like a giant fiery Geneline seeing him with his pockets empty, and Zaza is just cackling like a gremlin over and over, like ha 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 ha.
Wow.
And she wishes him with a frying pan, and then Zaza just like jumps around savage, like yeah, and then just cuts back to him looking scared. Guizhou, are you okay? He doesn't do a lot of those fantasy sequences, but I think when they do it, it's very funny.
Okay.
I'll be finishing up with the main show here because we were going to touch on the second season of the movie, but yeah, so it might be a little hard for you to track down this show legally, but there, like we mentioned earlier, there are sites where people stream cartoons under under the radar. The whole show's there very easily, and I highly recommend you check it out. Particularly, I think a good starting episode is Strange Taste of Kokomak, which is the one where they're stranded on the island. And the best episode overall is Conjunction of the Three Moons, Lian Chu's backstory. There's a lot of fun there. There's of that first season, I think there's only one episode I straight up dislike because it's just not an interesting plot, and it has them deciding we're going to leave the inn, and then they go temporarily help out some kind of racist Eskimo characters. Just not the most interesting plot, but others, even ones with the less interesting plot than others, are still really fun and imaginative. And don't feel bad, Chris, about being kind of just shrugged about the show.
Well, I'm not shrugged because there are things about this show that I generally enjoyed.
Right, but you're talking about as a whole.
As a whole, it didn't stick with me, and I want to I want to give it another shot.
Well, watch more of the episodes I sent you.
Yes, I will. Because just based on what you tell me, that there's a good, solid emotional core to this show, and from what I saw,
emotional stuff. I think it's also the imagination and comedy of these character interactions bouncing off each other. Just a lot of good ingredients to make a satisfying whole for me.
Okay.
But so first off, let's talk about the two other components of this a little more briefly because we got to end in about 20 minutes. Now, like I mentioned, original season came out in France in 2004. I think came out over here a year or two later. In 2008, they, motivated by the sex, made both a theatrical movie and a second season. I was sad for a long time because there was no word of the second season being brought over here because it bombed so hard, and maybe did okay in Canada. I never looked up how much they aired over there, but US, like I said, it was just gone, so I assumed they weren't bothering. And actually I was on a fan forum, which is long gone now, but fans were actually able to describe some of these episodes and post screenshots from them and such, and I was still bummed out because there was a lot of really cool concepts, and it spanned the characters more. Like there's an episode where Lian Chu finds out he has a surviving uncle. So he leaves the inn to live with them. It turns out not only this uncle a douchebag, but he reveals he was the first one to discover the dragon on the way to the village, but because he resented the family, he just ran off and let them all die.
Oh, wow.
Just dark stuff like that. World building, we see what a city looks like in this world. We start to see more airships beyond just the St. George. There's one episode there's one episode where they're just straight up pirates.
Uh-huh.
And there's another one where this big game hunter with a cool kind of mechanical galleon hires them to go to a dragon graveyard, kind of elephant graveyard style, where the idea is the last one he's missing is this aged one when it dies, and he wants to help with it. And that's another thing where Lian Chu has an honor code. We don't want to just kill it while it's alive. It's no, this is where they die. Oh, all right. And just a side note, I don't know if you caught any of the dragon names, the species names in what you watched, but they're the big clue, besides the crazy character names, that this is a European show. I wrote some of them down. Mimicar, Bafumador, Mamular, Glucose, Fangatofa, and my favorite, Jim Bob.
All of them sound like STDs, except for Jim Bob. I do like glucose though. That sounds like a nice little concoction you could get at McDonald's.
See, it's actually, you never see it alive. It's an episode where they come home with some of it already cut up into meat. So I don't know what it looks like. Yeah. So this second season. Now, here's the thing. A couple years later, Netflix got the show, and so I'd already downloaded that first season torrent, but I looked and I saw, holy shit, they actually have season 2. Did they localize it? Is it stuff? I don't care. I watch it, and so I watch it, and it is. I should have brought this up earlier. Another of my favorite things. What do you think of the theme song?
So that's The Cure, right?
Yeah.
So I like the theme song. I was listening to it. I was like, I know this group. I don't know where it's from, but I'm gonna Wikipedia it because it sounds like. Who is it? It better not be what was it? Something Thou Shalt Be Dragons or whatever. It sounded very familiar, and then I looked it up on Wiki. And I was like, it's The Cure. Wow, they got The Cure for the theme song. That's pretty boss. I gotta hand it to him on that one.
I don't know how that happened because that's a big name, and two, you don't see guys like that doing themes for kids cartoons very often.
No, you don't. You absolutely don't.
Fantastic.
Someone must have knew someone. That was pretty great.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And that's when I played the shit out of that on my iPod back in the college day. And to be fair, like I talked about, the other thing I should touch on is, because I mentioned this show has had some influence on my personal style on stuff like Spacious, the plans I have for it. Mm-hmm. One, when I commissioned the theme song they made, I made a playlist of songs I could use as a basis for the style, and this was one of them. It was wonderful. And two, I'm looking at, I know I'm just pulling up where I wrote all the influences, but so it mainly comes off on some character traits and how some of the early episodes are going to go, because Jed, the main guy, because these are also, the idea is that they're also struggling for hire guys. Then the idea is that the main girl Leslie does machines and equipment repair, and Jed has been done so much like temp work. He just has a bunch of random skills. And Jed, one thing he has in common with Guizdo is greed. He's all about riches and fame and just kind of being very shallow, but he also has a moral center. Though, and Leslie also has more of a moral compass that they bounce off of. Other than that, they're pretty different characters. I didn't want to just plagiarize. And the same thing goes for Kiki and Roscoe, who can kind of compare it to Zaza and Jennaline in that they're not as much of hands-on adventuring characters. And the fact that Roscoe is all about, managing the place they live. Mm-hmm. But that's about it. Like, Kiki isn't so much, I want to be a mechanic of my sister. Kiki's an artist, and Roscoe is kind of more timid than Jennaline tends to be. There's a running joke where whenever Guizdo runs off, often an axe or a knife hits the wall right where he was. Like Jennaline is throwing sharp stuff at him. Good thing it's a cartoon, or he would be long dead. And also, I'm redoing the thing where a lot of establishing shots and music to set up the vibe. And I'll get to what happened with that in the second season. And that some episodes, at least like the first two, would be like crux, like a foundation. Part of the foundation will be a kind of monster encounter, but it gives the characters opportunities to bounce off of. Like, last thing I'll say about the season one, the last episode, there's no proper season or series finale because it's not a long story. Guizdo, this is one of his lowest things. He hears about a shopkeeper couple trying to discover their long-lost kid, and he decides to forge the evidence to be like, oh, it's me, because they're rich. But as they're also in the middle of a job and they come with them, he starts seeing traits that he picks up. Like, they're obsessed with contracts. They do the, Slytherin salamanders and all that. And by the end, right when he starts to tell them, like, I admit, I conned you, but I think you're really my parents. Then right behind him, they find the missing kid.
Oh, wow.
So this second season, now, I had actually, before I watched on Netflix, I had seen one of the episodes uploaded in French on YouTube or something, and one thing stuck out to me because, for all intents and purposes, it was the same show aesthetically and concept-wise, but I noticed the background music went from that, like I said, that fanciful, energized, fantastical stuff to something else, and I hated it. It was... And I actually noticed in the credits they got different people for the music for whatever reason. I don't know why they couldn't reuse or rehire the first, but it went from, this kind of synthesized epic fantasy to basically like a bunch of drum and bass and acoustic guitar,
Ooh.
And it was so different and often minimalist that it was very jarring. Like, there are a lot of scenes where when they're trying to set the tension, they just play drums really quick for like 30 seconds. And I just want to shut up while also playing violin, like, I'm like, stop. Or when they're trying to do a comedic scene, it's just like a bass going boom, 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 and it's like, what is this?
That seems like that seems like a pretty massive downgrade. Cause
it wasn't the biggest downgrade.
Oh, so
this is what I've been teasing you about. Now I'm pasting a link right here. Copy and paste this in your browser of choice. This is the same thing we used to watch Sonic the Hedgehog. I cobbled this together the other day and put it up privately on YouTube. When I watched it, they had recast every voice. And not just that. One, they didn't even bother changing the voice credits in the credits. It's still the same season 1 guys.
So there were some serious production errors there.
Not just that. When I heard it, it was legit some of the worst voice acting I have ever heard.
Oh boy.
And I put together, this is only like 30 seconds. You have it open?
Yep, it's about to be open.
Here you are. Okay, so I've coupled together, it starts with Weezer's original voice, and then his season 2 voice, then Zaza's, and then a bunch of, where really, like, those guys weren't good. But when you get to, like, the bit characters rolling in from one episode, holy shit. All right, you ready?
Okay, it's coming. I'm ready.
All right.
We were supposed to bag that dragon
Old
skin and
Weasel.
all.
There's not enough money to pay last month's rent.
He turned into the squeaky voice teen from Simpsons.
Huh. Play that again?
Okay, here's first Guizdo and then the second one.
We were supposed to bag that dragon skin and all.
There's not enough money to pay last month's rent.
Way more annoying.
All right.
Here's Zaza, and I love the fact they actually got an actual kid to voice her in the first season, and she actually does a pretty good job. And then wait to hear all the other one.
Amazing how they always find a way to get out of house.
Here's a new one.
Oh, Guizdo, don't take it wrong. I'm joking.
Oof.
What a believable laugh. All right, now we get into the cream of the crop. Here's the side characters. And this is the first one. This is Lian Chu's uncle admitting what he did. This should be a heavy scene, but listen to how he delivers it.
It's true. I hated my family. Your father first.
Nice.
Okay.
Here's this other guy.
Tell me, are you the Grizzle from the orphanage?
The what?
Are you the Guizdo from the orphanage?
He didn't say Guizdo, though.
He said Guizdo.
Tell me, are you the Grizzle from the orphanage?
Oof.
Was he drunk?
He did not say Guizdo. He did not say Guizdo.
These people could not be actual actors they got. This must have been done on the scrim and just people in the office. Hey, you want to be in a cartoon?
Yeah,
I saved the best for last. Here's this king in one episode. They think he's been taken by a dragon. They think he's dead. Here's his apology.
Sorry, your colleague has been devoured. I cannot pay you what I owe. The dragon has stolen my treasure.
My treasure.
You know,
I'm sad.
Oh, so
the whole show sounds like that on top of boom, 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 boom. It is the one time I can think of where it feels like the writing could be good too, but you can't tell because it's all being delivered like this.
So I wonder how the creator felt during this second season.
I wonder if they know, because it's, again, this is a French show, but I do know that crappy music was in the original too, and they're also, it stands to, I can have time to isolate clips of it. There are points where it feels like sound effects are missing, like where there's the middle of a fight going on, and it's just those drum music and maybe like some grunts.
It makes me wonder whether or not there are like some real strict budgeting issues that happen.
I'm convinced that combined with the fact that the show flopped in English-speaking countries, they just went, fuck it.
It's
just put out something.
Yeah, there is a bit of a quality dip here, and I'm choosing my words carefully because this is the kind of shit that I live for. I mean, when it comes to like, animation, when it comes to like, casting actors, voice acting, and trying to live and breathe a production and make it work, it's hard.
I know.
So when you're bringing
the barrel.
Well, what I'm saying is that I want to know like what the showrunners felt at this point.
Yes, I would love to just ask them like what happened. How did this like both the music, the French version, because I also didn't include. There are points where you can tell like they didn't edit right because the pitch will change in mid-syllable, like it's being modulated. I've never seen anything like that in a show before.
I kind of want to like touch base with them. Like, are they on Twitter or something?
I don't know if the creators are. The production company is called Futuricon. They have an official website. Maybe you could email them.
If this is created by Arthur
Arthur Kwok.
He didn't work on the second season. It was directed by someone named Norman J. LeBlanc.
But he was the one that created the series, right?
He co-created the series, directed a lot of the first season and the movie, which we'll get to.
Okay. So maybe he was off doing the movie at this point while the second season was in production.
I don't think he would have influenced those production changes, at least. I think this has to be a money thing.
Perhaps.
And, get this all done in time for the movie. So it's a shame because there are a lot of great ideas in it. I don't know if I already brought them up or if I wrote them down. About the city. You see more. Season 2 is where you finally see actual Asian civilizations. Because in the first season it was just Lian Shu. And the finale, Guizhou came up as ancient talking dragon who, through terrible voice acting, reveals he created the world. He's millennia old, and he and his family can create these planets and islands. Just more imaginative stuff, but the sound, all of it, botch. It was a bummer.
I like how you're just like the sound. I'm imagining you just rocking back and forth at this point.
In a mental ward. The sound.
Well, because I'm feeling how I can hear how you feel about this show, and after seeing the clip of the movie, I was like, I want to know more about this thing. So I went back and I watched a little bit more that I could at the time
of the show.
Yeah. I watched a little bit more that I could, and all the things that you're stating, the jokes, the environments, the imagination, and the emotional core that I started to pick up on in the movie, I personally found it a bit sporadic, but I do want to know more. I'm curious. I'm a bit more curious about the show now that you've given me a taste of it.
Well, whether or not you want to watch more of it is totally up to you, and I'm just happy you were okay with talking about and watching some of that. But so let's just touch on, because the movie seems like the thing you're most interested in, and I watched that back when it first came out. It did not get a theatrical release over here. It went straight to DVD. So interesting thing, it is for all intents and purposes a reboot in its own world, because Zaza and Jenlin are not in it at all. There's a different girl they team up with named Zoe, and very few characters in the movie overall. There's them, 2 adults that she lives with at the beginning, and a couple of angry villagers led by John DiMaggio for one scene, and a couple of dragons. So I don't know if that was a budget thing either, but season 2 tries to do a lazy retcon where they start saying, the older daughter, she's the kid grown up. It's a couple years later, and Jenlin adopted her. And I'm like, nah.
Okay.
But so the gimmick there is, now, again, to start off, because I write about the voices in season 2, this also recasts everyone, but here was less of a deal, because they got some genuine talent and big names, and one of them baffles me considering how small the release was. So, Guizhou is voiced by Rob Paulson.
Yakko Warner, right?
Who is, and Pinky, a bunch of others, who is actually, I think he's a great fit for the kind of, because he's played other Weasley characters like that before, and he's very good at it.
As soon as I heard his voice, I was like, perfect.
Yes.
That's what I said.
The crazy one, Lian Shu is voiced by Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah, that kind of blew me away. I saw it on the cast list, and I was like, I really need to see how he sounds.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Just so you know, Lian Shu is very different in this movie.
Yes, he is.
He is much more quiet, much more humble, and you get the sense more unsure of himself because he walks more a little hunched over. In the show, where he always has this great sword, here he just has a nunchuck and a scythe.
Yeah.
But he's the one who almost has more of an arc, because what happens in the story where it starts, Guizhou and Hector are down in their luck. They don't even have really a place to live. So this little girl, Zoe, who loves the Legend of Dragons and reads these storybooks and stuff, her grouchy old uncle she lives with, basically you find out there's this ancient, probably the most powerful and unstoppable, almost godlike dragon of all, called the World Gobbler, that raises its come back into the forefront every generation.
Yeah.
And this guy faced him, and that's what led him to go blind, and all his knights are being killed after being sent off to kill it, to say it. And it was when Zoe tried running away, she's saved by them from some Jim Bobs, which are actually one of my favorites because of these little blue raptor things, but they are electric. And one thing we didn't touch on, a cute touch about Lian Shu, is his number one thing when he's not hunting is he knits.
Yeah, I saw that in his
the monk touches on it. In both the show and the movie, characters are confused by that. That's not very manly. That's not very intimidating. But he says, it's good for hand-eye coordination. It keeps me calm. I like it.
So, most valiant knight, when you aren't out hunting dragons, you knit.
He who drops a stitch winds up in the ditch. Knitting is excellent for the warrior's concentration.
And the movie, it takes it even further because we just start to insult him and he gets angry and he's like, my mother taught me that. Because this keeps and it embellishes on the Lian Chu's childhood because it starts out with a flashback of that and you realize by the end the world gobbler is the one who did that. And that affects Lian Chu in some interesting ways at the end. So here's the thing. So most of the movie is kind of a road trip where once they're hired, because Zoe, the girl, mistakes them for like legendary knights, and of course Guisto lies about how they're amazing, and because the uncle's blind and see how normal they look, he's like, all right, we'll do it. So go take the world gobbler, here's a down payment. And so a lot of it is a road trip. Zoe sneaks away because the uncle can't stand her, and it's them going encountering some other dragons and ruins. And this, if you thought the environments were amazing in the show, hoo boy. Oof. Like, you saw that section. That's the peak of... Because they call it the end of the world, like the edge, where it's just ruins of skyscrapers and temples, like hundreds of pieces of debris floating around.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, and the music is incredible. And
so, I've heard that theme before. Like,
it is actually the main one. That clip was made before the movie. It's called Lotus. And
yeah, it's by Jalan or something.
A Bali band, and they licensed it for the movie because I'm sure it was a passion project for Arthur Clarke and this guy. And they're like, this fits because. Like, what happens here? So, there's some much better action and world building in this. Even though Lian Chu is different and doesn't say as much, I think him and Guisto, their chemistry still really works. Like, the scene you saw, it's a standard trope where the characters have a falling out and they're kind of separated by the bridge of the second and third act. But this one is really impactful because they start seeing signs like the last knight who tried to fight World Gobbler and has gone legit insane. And Guisto finally snapped and is like, we're all going to die doing this. Like, Zoe is naive and thinks it's just another fairy tale thing's gonna be okay, but in real life, knights die, and I don't want you to die. Lian Chu's like, if you feel that way, leave. And I love the fact that, like, Lian Chu is, like, just constantly polishing his scythe, and we starts getting, like, oh, you say stop it, and Lian Chu's like, stop it. And he's like, oh, no, and then nature gets all pretty, and Lian Chu's just like, stop it. Like, it's like a genuine argument and, like, simmering tension.
When the world gobbler is dead, we can have our little farm.
Oh, right. The great knight Lian Chu is going to say to the world gobbler, I do not fear you, ugly thing. And poof, the world gobbler's dead. And we're all happy as pigs.
Stop.
I'm not finished. And then nature blossoms. Everything's green. And there are little white bunnies flying all over the place.
Stop.
We're all going to die. Because of some little girl who dreams of knights. But you see, life's not a fairy tale. In real life, knights, they always die. I don't want you to die, Lian Chu.
But that's not the whole movie. And there's another scene. Like, there's some stuff that they just don't explain. Like, first off, when they first start on the trip, Guido was originally not going to go because they give him like a little bag of what came to a gold payment. And they add a life goal where they want to settle down and start a farm. And Guido's like, you see this? This is our farm. We just walk away. He'll be none the wiser, and we start the farm. And then Zoe comes along, and both she and Lian Chu guilt trip him into keep going. They never mention that bag again. Like, you'd think he would just be like, oh, it fell off the edge, and no, it's like, probably know he still has it, so why is... What? And the other thing, so they meet this knight who's gone crazy, and the big thing is his two hands are acting like they're independent creatures. Like, he puts on different voices, like doing sock puppet movements with them. It's really fun, anime, because it's almost like he's being guided by the movements of his arms, like dragged around by them. And so when Guido separates, because the uncle talked about how there are a bunch of premonitions about... that lead up to it, and one of them is talking animals. And so he thinks he sees, the first dragon they encounter is one that splits up into dozens of smaller, like, bat dragons. Oh. And they get away, but he sees two of them that start talking to him, and you notice they both have Rob Paulson voices, and then zooms out, and he sees it's both his hands.
Yeah.
He starts screaming, Lian Chu finds him, and the next scene, he's still being crazy and acting like that knight, and then when they crash land on the island he's fine. No explanation for any of that. Which is it's very frustrating when you do some cool stuff like that, but don't clarify or properly.
Yeah. So I noticed that theme was playing the Lotus theme.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful section. Like it's very, very genuine.
Yeah.
And I say that like
there are other genuine moments. I'm not.
And I'm not debating that. I'm noting that moment, like it really helps define like this is a very unique world that you're seeing. Like you've probably never seen anything like this specific thing before. And there are a couple things that happen that are visually very cool. And then it stops with these bats, bats that you're talking about. Like the moment comes to a screeching halt. And I threw up my hands. I was like, damn it. I was like, come on.
Yeah, before that ends, one of the best parts, Squeeze's ejecting, just sitting on a stranded island, and lightning strikes the skyscraper right next to him. And it's just the windows going out, the building blew up, and he doesn't even react. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like that.
It is. It's really cool. And then it just ends. And that scene just stops. And I was like, what a wasted...
A lot of the action scenes still integrate stuff like that. Because the next scene is like the island they're on is starting to go down, and there are like 3 dragons hovering around and gradually breaking into pieces. And so Lianchu is both swiping them when they come by, and Guizhou is starting to go crazy and admit the lie and almost try to kill Zoe.
Oh, wow.
He's like, you want to hear a story? Oh, yes, tell us a story. Oh, how about the 2 Batu strangle the little girl? It's legit kind of scary.
Come on now, quit fooling around, Sir Guizhou. It's not funny.
Hello, little kitties. Would you like a story?
Oh, yes, tell us a story.
The story about the naive little girl who mistook 2 lowly roads for noble knights.
No, we've already heard that one.
Another one, please. Then the one about the nice hunter devoured by the world gobbler because of some little girl who dreamed of noble knights.
Yuck, that one really stinks.
And the one about the 2 red bats that strangled the little girl. Oh, yes, that's the one.
But it's never explained. And like Zoe, I feel like she has moments that are cool, but she often more in the whole movie as a whole, I feel like she comes off as more annoying. Like she talks way too much, gets excited way too much. She screams through half the action. Like it's good intention, but could have used better execution. But yet said, yeah, I still recommend the movie. There are other isolated moments like the stuff you talked about. It has a much more somber tone than the show. There's still humor.
It seemed like it, yeah.
The show, the world feels a lot more. It almost gives off the vibe that it's dying because at least the areas they go to are because there's like fewer side characters. I wonder it was a budget thing because they wanted to make sure the environments look good. And there's some stuff that happens at the end when they could beat the dragon. And again, never explained. But it's a unique show. I mean, unique movie, and definitely. Okay, now here's the other thing. I mentioned how the show was previously on Netflix and Hulu in the past. As they're recording, the movie is still on Hulu. And you know, Hulu streaming things come and go. So if what we're talking about sounds interesting, you have a Hulu account. Hey, you won't lose any money if you go and watch it.
Okay.
So I think that we can probably start winding things down. So I would absolutely recommend the first season of the show. I would recommend the movie. It's cool. Nothing else like it. I would not recommend that second season. You can try. I think some people were able to get past that. I'll admit I watched like 2/3 of it because I still love the characters and concepts. But what a unique way to ruin a show. I should have said I basically turned into Alphys from Undertale. That second season ruined everything. That's me like ranting about some Mew Mew anime.
Okay.
Only it's a French show about guys hunting dragons.
Okay, I can understand that.
And do you have any closing thoughts on Dragon Hunters? What you've seen and what we talked about?
It's a very curious show, and I really want to. I do want to give it another shot. Hopefully, when I'm a lot less busy. This was. It's the design.
It's fun to talk about.
Yeah, I think the execution. It may not be for everyone, and I hope at some point it gets another shot. Like I really do.
It wouldn't surprise me if they reboot it someday. Like I said, it was huge in France, so maybe in another decade.
Yeah, kids shows are very we talk about well, we talk about it's not that we talk about kids shows like it's so like a dime a dozen, like they just come out of nowhere, cartoons and animations. I mean, there's so many of them nowadays.
That's what this was for me.
Yeah, we kind of forget like there is a giant system where executives and most studios are bidding for projects. They move shows around like chess pieces. They have logistics that show like what the advertising market's going to look like years in advance. So they're like, what show would look best in this day and age with this amount of people, with this market, this target audience that we're looking for. And it's kind of with a show like this where there is a lot of heart and there is a lot of imagination in it. It's kind of difficult to realize that how is the show going to make money for the advertisers if it doesn't put bodies in movies, puts bodies in seats, makes people buy toys and DVDs.
There was merchandise in Europe. I've seen pictures.
Yeah, but was there merchandise here?
No, it never stood a chance here.
Yeah,
it frustrated me because I want to bring up this was aired in the same era where they had stuff like Maguzi. And like, they had some very
Magoozy.
but they had really popular French shows, Code Lyoko, Totally Spies. I don't like either of those, but those were big hits with big followings.
Yeah.
This would have, I'm confident if they put it there, it would have flourished.
It most likely would. Like,
God damn it.
The only thing that this show does not have, and if it does have it, I have not seen it, is, let's see, how can I put this? Pretty girls on it. And that's one thing that the Magoozy and the Toonami lineup had in spades. And that
Lyoko didn't really have pretty girls. That had a weird art style.
That had a weird art style, and that was a little different. See, I'm not tuned into the Code Lyoko market.
Yeah, I didn't like what I saw of it, but I know people loved it.
Yeah, and so I know there are fans of it, but I do know that Magoozy and Toonami catered more towards the young boy market.
Magoozy was Toonami Junior.
Yeah, so when it comes to the definitive young boy market here in America, we want action, we want pretty girls, and we want toys, and that was the name of the game back then, and that sucks because it alienates everybody else.
It can make good shows like this just not get a shot. Maybe that was why they scheduled it that way.
That's most likely what I mean. That's the common denominator of what I'm speculating at. There could be hundreds of factors that I'm not taking into account, but when it comes to releasing cartoons, companies like to keep in mind that the one specific market that they're trying to cater to is the age demographic of, I think, 8, 9 to 11, maybe 12. Not sure. It's a weird, silly idea.
8 to 11 too.
Yeah, it's super weird to just focusing on that specific market because
unless you're Japan, because then you can focus on that and 40-year-old single men.
That's true, but
that's a real thing.
Yeah, it is a real thing, and it's
look up the Pretty Cure demographics.
Yeah. But also Monica Magica, the list goes on. But when it comes to like ages 8 to 12, it's not every kid, not every boy is going to like the same thing, and that's hard. That's hard to get a grasp.
And there is an audience for this. I've talked about it in Europe, but it just didn't get its chance. Its time in the sun over here.
Yeah, it sucks. It really does.
But the fact that what's over there means we could see another form of it someday, even if it doesn't get localized. Well, who knows? Because Futuricon, they've been doing a ton of other kid shows. Maybe they or someone else will finally someday do a pitch and get successful. Like, hey, let's revisit Dragon Hunters.
I really hope so, because the show. I mean, every show that gets greenlit for a pilot, greenlit after the pilot, it's a risk. Even the pilot is a bit of a risk because that's money being thrown at something that might not ever air as a broadcast piece. But like when you're talking about like a 12 episode deal, that's millions and millions of dollars, and that's a lot of money. Like just to go out on, maybe this will sell, maybe not. It's weird. Cartoon business is weird. That's
who knew this would become our most in-depth discussion about cartoon demographics.
Yeah. Hopefully we can talk about it a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. If you ever want to discuss that in general, I'm fine with it.
Sure.
But I think that's going to bring episode 27 to a close. We've kind of gone over the time you need to get off anyway. But thanks so much for agreeing to do this and watching stuff. I'm not going to lie. This is one when I first got into podcasting in college, around the same time I discovered this show, and I literally imagined, like, if I ever start my podcast, I want to talk this. So consider this a goal over a decade old accomplished.
I'm glad you had fun.
I feel like I'm hopeful that at least if just one listener discovers the show through this and likes it, mission accomplished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's what I want. That's one of the goals of this show. It's in general. Mm-hmm. We talk more well-known stuff. Not everybody's seen it, and if what we say encourages you to check it out, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, we also both recommend Infinity War. I recommend Ni no Kuni 2. And I have a feeling you'll be recommending Ni no Kuni 2, but you can get back to me on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that'll bring this to a close. And just to tease, I already talked to you, Chris. What are we going to be discussing for episode 28?
Well, I would like to talk about Rampage next time around.
Specifically, the new Dwayne Johnson movie based on the arcade game.
It's going to be a really fun time.
Yep, you're going to motivate me to. I will go check it out a few days after recording this. Hopefully, I mean, by the time the next episode comes out, it might be out of some theaters. But you can always revisit the episode when it hits Redbox or whatever. It does kind of sound me out. I think it'll be fun to talk let me put it this way: it'll be nice to talk a currently in theaters movie that isn't Marvel or animated.
Yeah, that'd be neat.
So thank you so much for listening. Go check out the things we talked about. Go see them anywhere in theaters. Go play Kuni 2 and track Dragon Hunters down how you can, be it the movie or the show. If you watch season 2, good luck. But I am John Fleury.
And I'm Christopher Wade.
And this is a major breaching contract. Please note, paragraph 32, article 3, clause 34C. That is something Weezer brings up a million times, along with please put an X here, here, and there. You don't have to read. That's good. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about what this says. And then he just starts laughing.
He's like a car salesman.
Oh, he totally is.
Yeah.
Good night, all.
See ya.